Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Kenyan Rider. So today we'll be talking about 5 things that I wish I knew before buying my first motorcycle. And just a disclaimer, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with my bike. I totally do not regret picking my bike. And these things which you will find out are things that they apply to all bikes. The first and most important thing that I wish I knew is the whole engine braking process. The environment I've grown up in, we don't really get brand new vehicles. What we consider brand new are things that are sold second hand from abroad. So things that are maximum 8 years old are what we call here brand new cars. So, and I think mostly the people who do purchase zero mileage vehicles are the ones who are more informed of the whole engine braking process. I was surprised that there is such a thing. And one thing that I wish I knew when I bought my first bike was, that whole process. Ideally, when you buy a brand new zero mileage motorcycle, you first have to make sure that you don't push your bike. Don't try and test the top speed. Don't rev the engine too high, because the engine itself is not. There's a way it's during this engine braking process where it sort of wears in a controlled manner, so in such a way that things fit perfectly, because nobody is perfect in the whole manufacturing process. So there's this little bit of wear that's actually encouraged, that's during the engine braking process, so that things fit as they should. And when you overstress that process, then you end up damaging your engine. The thing that saved me from ruining my engine at the start of my motorcycling journey is the simple fact that when I first started riding, the bike itself, the Taken 250, it felt very big and scary at the time, so I never really pushed it because I was afraid of getting into an accident, because this is the first time that I'm actually on a motorcycle. And if you guys watched my first video where I explained exactly how the Taken felt to me, you'd know that at the start I wasn't very confident. I feared the bike, not to the extreme, but I feared it enough not to push the bike. So I think that's what saved me. The second thing was the importance of the fast service. You see, the engine oil that is in the bike as you get it out of the showroom is not the ideal engine oil that the bike is supposed to have on a day-to-day basis, because that engine oil is also supposed to help in the braking process. So you might find that the engine oil is not it doesn't lubricate as well as it should, because it's trying to control that wear that needs to happen for the engine braking process to happen. So having that engine oil for an extended period of time can also be an issue, and especially if you're as ignorant as me, and then now you start pushing the bike before you've actually gotten the chance to remove that engine oil. So you could cause some damage now, because as much as the engine braking process is complete, the oil itself is not suited for the high performance running of that particular engine. So that's the second thing actually, yeah, the engine oil. So what I ended up doing is I waited for 2000 kilometers, which was when I was suggested to change my engine oil every time. This one was not for the first engine oil change, but on a regular basis. So I'd already started the regular maintenance pattern, even without understanding the engine braking process. So possibly I might have gained the confidence before I changed that engine oil. I honestly can't remember. And then pushed the engine of the bike to the point where I might have caused some damage. I still can't tell. So far the engine works relatively fine, so maybe I've just been lucky, or things have just gone in my favor unknowingly, ignorantly. But yeah, these are things that I learned on later on as I continued exploring motorcycling and hanging out with seasoned motorcyclists who then start imparting this knowledge to you. So that's why it's very important to do your research. Do your research very well and make sure that you understand almost all aspects, even if it might appear boring to you, but it's good to understand some of these things. But I realized that that's something that, apparently it was only me who didn't know about it, but in my circle. But yeah, I honestly just didn't know about it. Luckily, my fear got in the way and actually helped me. But had I gotten a used bike, maybe a 150cc used bike, and then now I shifted to the Taken 250, most likely I would have damaged that engine, because I would have the confidence to push the engine, and most likely I would have destroyed the whole engine braking process because I just didn't know. Next, doing a nuts and bolts check. By the way guys, it's very very important to do a nuts and bolts check every once in a while. I'll tell you why. There are times you ride and then you notice that something is just hanging. You just don't understand what's going on, why it's hanging. You never hit anything, but you lost a bolt at some point. There's a time I was about to lose my number plate, but luckily it's connected by two bolts. So one of them was holding it in place while the other was already hanging out. I had lost the nut holding it on the other end. I didn't know until something more serious came up, where one of the major bolts that are holding the frame of the bike together started getting loose, and I started hearing a very weird knocking sound, especially when I was on rough terrain, or I hit a bump or a ditch or a pothole, or just anything that was just, let me call it, an uneven surface. I would hear this clunking sound, and I knew from the time I had the bike when it was brand new, I never used to hear that sound, so I knew there was something wrong. That's when now I looked around, I found I had lost that bolt for the number plate. I thought that was the issue. In my next service, I got the mechanic to find another bolt for me and tighten that, but the sound kept on persisting until my next service, where, because I honestly looked for that sound. I checked all the bolts. There are some which I assumed were okay, because when you look at some of these bolts, they look very sturdy, but apparently it was one of them that was actually an issue, and it was very loose. In fact, had I continued for a bit longer, maybe the bolt itself would have cracked, because now it's the stresses acting on it are not what it's designed for, because it's not in the right place. Yeah, so doing a nuts and bolts check, very important. There's so many, there are quite a number of bolts I've actually lost just because I failed to do a nuts and bolts check in time. Then I just find bolts are missing, things are very loose. So it's always important, always do a nuts and bolts check and learn how to do it, because you need to know exactly what you're looking for and how to do it, how to actually do it, the tools you need. Because what some people do is they loosen and tighten all the bolts just to make sure that they're actually tight. Yeah, reading the manual is also very important, very important. Number one, you get to understand the maintenance schedule for your bike. Please don't always listen to what other people tell you. Something that I learned with this Taken is there's actually quite a difference between the 2023 Taken and the 2024 Taken. For example, the spark plug for 2024 Taken actually takes quite a long time for you to actually replace it, while the 2023 Taken you need to replace it more regularly. It's cheaper, but they need to replace it more often than the more expensive 2024 spark plug, which would take you a much longer time. So you see, if you just listen to that person, you maybe you have the 2023 Taken, and you keep that spark plug that's supposed to have been changed so many times over, and when a mechanic tells you that, oh, this needs to be changed, you say, this mechanic is trying to call me or something, they just want more money. Sometimes the mechanics are out there for you, sometimes they're not. They can actually look for issues or rather fabricate issues with your bike so that you come to them again. So you need to understand your bike, your maintenance schedule, tire pressure, very important. The last video that I posted to the trip to Namanga, that is where I learned the lesson about tire pressure the most. So what I had done is I had put 32 psi both front and back for that trip, just that same morning. I'm sure in the introduction you saw me at a petrol station. I was actually filling in the tires and put 32 psi. So what happened, everything was quite okay. In fact, everything turned out to be quite good, because my fuel economy was much better than the other riders who also had the same bike, the Taken 250. They ended up spending around 2,000 shillings in terms of fuel. I spent 1,500, so I saved on fuel. However, the problem actually came when it started raining. Now 32 psi is the recommended pressure when your bike is carrying around the maximum load. I was not carrying the maximum load, it was just myself. The boxes were relatively empty, so you can imagine that the tire is very hard with a very light bike, which means that the point of contact, and this is why I saved fuel, because the point of contact between the bike and the tire and the road was so small that there's very little friction that was resisting the movement of the bike. So I ended up saving fuel. However, when it started raining, remember when it rains, the grip on the road becomes significantly reduced. So what happened is it rained twice actually. So when we got to Namanga, it rained. However, we managed to avoid that one, so I never noticed anything. However, going back, I didn't record this part of the video because we're now heading back, but it rained those areas close to Kitengela. And when it started raining, I remember I immediately wanted to branch off to a petrol station and wait it out because it was getting really heavy. However, what happened is my fellow rider in front of me just branched off normally, and I followed them at the exact same place, but I actually skid and fell. Why? Because I had less grip. Had I known that, I would have actually been way more cautious about how I branch off the road. You know, there was like a tiny ditch that was there, and that was enough to lower my grip to almost zero. So the front tire just skid and I immediately fell. Upon further investigation, we found out that it's actually my tire pressure that caused my accident. So tire pressure can also be a factor that causes your accident, not necessarily careless riding. So it's always important to know tire pressure. There's the tire pressure that you're supposed to have under normal circumstances. There is maximum load tire pressure, and there is wet surface tire pressure. Most of the time the standard is quite okay, even during the wet, though you'll just need to be a lot more cautious. However, if you know you're going to be under extended periods of time and in wet conditions, you're actually supposed to reduce your tire pressures to the recommended amount so that you have the correct amount of grip in your tire. Lastly, riding gear purchase. I wish I got my riding gear, number one, in advance, and then number two, had done my research on where to actually purchase these things. Now what I ended up doing, I bought both the bike and the gear at the same time and at the same place. And what I found out, I don't know, it's been 2 years down the line, or 1.5 years down the line, is that I could have actually purchased my gear at even half the price I got while purchasing them at the first time. Yes, I wish I knew where I could get this riding gear at a much cheaper price, but that's the deal I had. So yeah, that's what happened. So 5 things. Engine braking, very important. Whether you guys, if you're buying a new bike and you don't know about engine braking, please make sure that you understand exactly what is going on in engine braking, so that you appreciate why you're not supposed to push your bike. Number 2, fast service. Fast service is very important, and mostly because the engine oil that is there before your service is actually designed to allow the engine to wear to a certain extent, and that is during the engine braking period. If you have that engine oil for an extended period of time, that wear will continue, and you'll end up having an issue where your engine has worn up, it's overdone the engine braking process, and then now you start having a less efficient engine, if not a destroyed one. Nuts and bolts check. If you want to avoid having to to replace bolts and lose number plates and lose parts of your bike without knowing. Always know how to do a nuts and bolts check. Read the manuals that you get for your bike. It has all the information you need, including the maintenance schedules that you're supposed to have, how to store your bike in the event that you're not using it for an extended period of time. What are some of the things you should do. Well, those are some other things that you should actually know, especially if you're buying your bike just to do long distance trips, because you can't keep doing long distance trips all the time. So there are some times when you'll actually have to keep your bike unused for some while. There's actually a way you're supposed to keep your motorcycle. Tire pressure is very important. Take it from me. I have gotten into an accident. I've fallen off the bike because of tire pressure. Nothing else, just tire pressure. Very important lesson. So instead of learning the hard way like me, at least I've told you, if you chose to listen to this point. Riding gear purchase, I would always, I think for me, I'd advise that you buy your riding gear beforehand. So far, the bike is treating me well. The bike is absolutely fantastic. It's a bike that I would actually recommend for those who are looking to do commuting and want a bike that you can do mild adventures. The Technic 250 it's an all-round bike, but it's very, very good at commuting. Yeah, so that's what I have. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.